Hello, welcome to another edition of Low-Code Campfire. This is episode number 112 for Friday, August 25th, 2023. It's Open Line Friday. Whatever you want to talk about is what we'll talk about. I always have a couple of things in my back pocket, so we'll talk about them too. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant an App. This is an event we run every Friday at this hour. It's an all skill levels welcome event, but we get together, talk about Plant an App in specific, and how we use low code in our businesses. And if you have techniques to share, challenges in your development, experiences that you want to show, we would appreciate you participating. We record all these. They're out on youtube.com/plantanApp. So do sign up for those. We run a pretty simple agenda. We start out with introductions because this is a meeting format, very interactive. And then after a while, we'll do any of these from Campfire, the first call always, and then pick some of these other topics to talk about as well. After an hour or so, we'll turn off the recording, go into our Afterglow segment, just an opportunity to talk informally and off the record. Do engage with us, jump in, show and tell, use the chat window if you want. We have very few guidelines, but among them, if you've got noise going on behind you, hit mute. Other than that, be nice to people. You can submit questions and topics in advance using this QR code or links that are in the emails that we send to you. I will say good morning to you all, this huge audience we have today.
Good morning, Jim. Jim must be muted and not realize it.
Perhaps, or yes.
Yeah, there's two mute buttons.
Yeah.
And you got to get them both in the right spot to work.
I know. Well, and one of them's built onto my headset, so if I turn the chair and then it mutes myself. Yeah.
We're glad you're able to come off mute because otherwise it was going to be a pretty quiet meeting. So that's good too. I love that.
I was just wondering if there was a new meeting link or something since I was, the first one I heard. So.
Yes. Well, so
Don found it. So that's.
Yeah, I don't think we changed the meeting link. Okay.
I got an email this morning. It's a routine thing that says the meeting has been updated. I don't know exactly if the original one was different than this one or not, but I just click on the latest email that I received. That's how I remember that.
I trigger those right before the meeting. It's the easiest way for me to send out a reminder. So that's what that's about.
Cool.
Good. All right. So we got a short list. If you've got something, you can bring it right to the front. No waiting.
I got a really cool problem right now.
Nice.
I have a large county client that has a department that had their own website and have moved over to the main website. That's in process right now. One of the problems is they love PDFs and they make PDFs out of everything, even the simplest thing for, and I've argued the point, it's my bane of life, of existence, to just put the darn thing on a web page so you could read it instead of putting it into a PDF. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of data that they have. And the problem with that, of course, is that it adds over 50 gig to the website. And so what we did is we created outside storage. We're using Azure. So now I've got that linked up and that's all working fine. But the problem is that when you, if somebody has to submit a form and then that form is converted into a PDF and then that PDF is put into the Azure, it takes forever for the write to happen. I don't know. It's something going on with sending it to the Azure file system. If I do it where the PDF is saved to local storage, local to the site, takes a second. You hit the submit button and pops up saying thank you, it's saved. If I save the PDF out to the Azure address, it takes like over a minute, and then it comes back saying, it all works and everything, but it just takes too long. So my solution for convenience for the customer, for all of that, is that it needs to be saved locally. But the trick is there a mechanism that you can think of that will later on, maybe they don't have to wait any longer, maybe it redirects, but then the process keeps working somehow? Is there a mechanism to move it from the storage locally to Azure after the process, after the form's submitted?
Absolutely. So
cool.
Yeah, there's a couple of things about that. As far as the just out of curiosity, once it's on Azure, are you able to read it at high speeds? It's just the write that's the problem?
It's the write that's the problem, because the read, it gives a different address, strangely enough. For instance, if you put something at /portal/0/documents/value.pdf. So you put it there. You don't read it from there, though. The URL is blog dot company name dot.
They put it out on their server.
Yeah, and that address, it's instant, just as fast as any other location online. So it's just the writing it out to there that takes so long.
So are you familiar much with the automation or Sharp Scheduler functionality, Don?
Not a lot, but I have done one automation where I send an email out if a job is 10 minutes late or something, or 10 days out or something.
So this would be one that I think it would be a really easy one to put into automation for a later time. And so from a just talking about it standpoint, it's like, you want to generate it, you're going to generate it on local storage, so it's instantaneous for the user. At that point, you don't care when it gets over to Azure, but it needs to be stored there forever. Right. So,
right. Well, in a sense, I do care, but I follow what you're saying, and what they want to have happen is, again, very old mentality, but they want to receive the PDF attached to an email. What I would like to do is, I have just recently convinced them that you don't want the PDF attached. You want an email to notify you that the PDF is available, but a link to the PDF, which means that the PDF, we need to settle where the PDF is before that link is sent to them. And so at the end of that automation process, we'll move the file and then send an email with the new file link.
So if you're, there's a couple of different approaches, right? If you're trying, if the goal is to get the email to them very quickly, then you've got to send them the live link on your local site. But that's not going to stay alive forever. So that's
right.
If you're okay with it being delayed, the email goes out when the copy is complete, and that's 10 minutes later, and you're okay with that. That's very easy to implement. And then, if none of those, if you wanted to go faster, then you got to dive into how can you make Azure go faster, which it's sounds like there's something going wrong there that it's taken so long.
Well, I think I'll attack it in two fronts, but I like the idea of, I think within 10 minutes is fine. Yep. For their needs. They don't know. A person is applying for something, so they want to know that day, but they don't want to know I suggested that we just set it up as some kind of a batch that runs late at night, and all of the applications that came in during the day are processed in the middle of the night, and then they get an email with notifying them in the morning, and they don't want that. They need to have, they need to stay on top of it as it's happening rather than process it all in the morning. So 10 minutes is probably just fine.
Well, so it's going to be, I'm sorry. So from an automation standpoint, if they finish the entry of the form and they get a confirmation on their screen that says, "Yep, watch your email for something from us in the next few minutes," at the conclusion of that, you can kick off something that results in an automation running. So, for example, you could create an entity that will serve as your queue of things to do. So your form writes a record into the queue that has everything that you need to build the email, and as well as build the PDF. So now all of the work that goes into generating the PDF happens as part of automation. Automation is its trigger is to, from time to time, or maybe on database change, but it's going to look at, is there something in the queue? It takes the first thing in the queue to work on, builds the PDF, sends it off to your Azure storage location. And whenever that succeeds, now it fires off the email. So it can be, rocking along pretty slowly, and yet, within a short time, it'll all happen. But the user isn't hung waiting for that.
Got it. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Would you like to kind of see what that would look like in automation?
Yeah. The trigger is the question. I'm not sure what the trigger is. The only trigger I've used is a daytime trigger, every day at 5 a.m. kind of a trigger.
So there's a choice here, but I would probably set this up as a time trigger, but it's really, it can, there's a couple of different ways. So we want to look at the automation section. And so assuming that you have a queue table that whatever that is, give it some good name. So there's the triggers that you can use is one of them is a database trigger. And so this says that when a new record gets inserted into the database, that this job will run. So going back to one that we did for you a long time ago, this particular thing was when we first started talking. So this is the book entity that we created for you. It doesn't matter what we call it, but anytime there's a new record inserted into book, it's going to this trigger is going to fire. And if you hover this information tag, it's going to tell you what it's going to give you, including you're going to get column names. So column names from books. So everything that's in the book record is going to be available to you to use directly. So if you just want to have in your entity everything you need to either do the work or get to a record where the work is available. So if we were to look at, I'm going to look at my book entity here. It's probably called name or book name, but let's see what it is. There is a property called name on my book entity. So I could, if I wanted to send you an email every time somebody adds a book, it would go something like, you're going to do an email action, and who are you going to send it to? But you would have available for you to use. So let's say and I'm just going to send it to myself here just so we can see this thing work. And that's probably all we need. If you needed to do an attachment before this, you would generate your PDF and do your copy to, I mean, just the same things that you're already doing in your action stack, but you do it here in this. And that should do it. Patrick, you're watching me. Did I make any mistakes?
I don't think so.
But what user is active at this point? Are you a super user?
You're not any user. So if you you're this user. If you want
context user, very good.
So you can be whoever you want to right here, or you'd have to do a load user if you want. So if we go back to entities and add a new book, we should get an email. Oh, there it is. I don't know if I have any required fields here.
Oh, congratulations.
All right. Automations, when they run, oh, had I saved this? I don't know if I'd saved it. So if I haven't saved it, it didn't do anything. Let's see if I think I'd saved it.
I think you did, yeah.
All right, let's see. But when automations run, and I'm going to take a look at it, they have history associated with them, and so one way to tell if something works is to come in and look at the history. And so we got, book update watcher that says it's running. Oh, that's something else. What did we just create? Queue watcher was the thing that we created. Book update watcher, which was something else. Oh, that was on a database update that was going on. So I don't know what that was. I'm going to disable that. Some other testing I was doing on another day. I use book all the time. So let's turn that off. We can just click that, and then let's try a new book. So this happens every time there's a new book. And so now we've got to do another one to test here.
Unauthorized
Doing it,
autobiography.
but I'm not. I don't approve. All right. Things that are database triggers can sometimes be a little tricky to, and I'm just going to run it manually here to see what they do behind the scenes. I hear an email, so maybe it worked finally. Behind the scenes, they create a actual database trigger mechanism, and so we need to force it to actually create it. So the first time it can be a little bit cantankerous. And it's yeah, once you get it, it tends to be very reliable. Okay, let's see if we I'm just going to go see if I got an email. That might be the easiest way to learn. Working. Well, that was my my manual run. Let's see if we can get it now. Let's see if it'll run automatically. going to try this one again. We didn't wire anything to the delete, so deleting something doesn't do anything, but we'll do a new one again here. That looks like a new time, so that might have run already. And I don't know if it is, I don't know if it is or not. So I'm going to also say that you can have a trigger that is a time trigger and say that you want to do like every 1 minute. And so this is the alternative where you just go out and read and see if there's any unprocessed records on your queue and then use the record that way.
What's your suggestion? Is it a field saying, you know, processed and leave the records, or delete the record when you're done with it? You know, keep the queue small.
The pattern I like is to have one that has a status and change the status, because then it gives you, you know, very easy history and something that you can run again. You can reset the status on it and do it again. And then you could have a subordinate job or I mean, an additional job, or even just another statement in here that says, and delete everything over 30 days old. So you could kind of have it, build the cleanup into your design.
No, okay, got it.
I kind of like the time one, just because you're regardless of anything that can happen in like if your site resets I mean, database triggers can be a little cantankerous if you do a time trigger. If you're not in a rush for it, you know, setting it at 1 minute, it's going to be very low impact.
Yeah.
Query this table and they'll get it, whether it's 2 seconds or 60 seconds, but it'll be a little random, but it'll happen.
That it does seem to make more sense. If for some reason the new entry, the insert didn't work, there's a record there that's never going to be accounted for. Whereas if you do it by the minute, you can, I don't know, what's the mechanism? I'm not the top SQL guy. Ben, he is here. What's the mechanism for knowing if there are records that doesn't just cause an error? You know, like you do a count, and if the count is greater than 1, then go do a select top 1 of the record to get the next in the queue.
If you were, you mean for every minute? When
Yeah,
you're
if you do the
yeah.
every minute one, you don't
Yeah.
do the insert one. Now, what you're doing every minute
I would just,
to see if there's an entry in the queue.
right, I would look to see, based on the status idea that Dale was just mentioning, you just look at the status.
Top one with the order by create date. So you can get the oldest one first.
Yeah.
And but that could cause an error if there are none.
Yeah, so you would if there are, it's not going to be an error, it's going to be no record ID would be returned. And so you add conditional logic to say if there's nothing, then don't do any
Right.
of the,
And that's what I don't understand. What is that conditional logic?
So sure, we can take a look at that. Let's close this stuff up. So your logic would be something like a SQL query,
Mm-hmm.
or a SQL query. Probably you could do them in a batch too with a load create list from SQL. But anyway, if you want to do just one, you could do select. Actually, let's show off the AI. Hmm. Yep. So top one from app book or by date published, and then perhaps you'd have a status. I don't have a status field in book, so that's why I kind of struggled there. But you do something like where.
Oh, so the prompt, I mean, it's kind of an aside, but the AI assistant prompt knows the book entity, so it rewrites your AI request based on that before it sends it to chat or whoever you're sending it to.
Yes, our assistant knows the entities that we have on the system.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And again, we didn't have a status, so I'm just making this up. But then, so this is going to give you an output of let's see, I don't want to do this. This will store it as book. So now you have access to book name and book status and all the different things that are there. And if the ID is the book :ID is blank, then there is no book. So we can simulate that by saying where name equals something that doesn't exist, right? And so now book ID will be blank, and we can verify this, for example, by doing a log event. We'll write to the log, say so I would fully expect that we're going to get an entry in the log that is the ID is, and then nothing following it, because we don't have one here. And for clarity, I'm going to turn off this one and set this one to run every 10 seconds. And so back to automation. And like something I did here. So this off, this was out of order. Bad syntax. You're falling down on the job.
I didn't notice it either. I do the same thing.
All right, so so now this thing should run every 10 seconds. And it did. And if we look in the logs, we have an entry and it says the book ID is whatever. If the book ID is blank. So now you can test for book ID not equal to quote, quote, and that says you have something to work on. And so that would, in your case, the Q entry would be, let's see, where is this?
So using that technique, if I understand correctly, that means every action that I put after that needs to have the condition of book ID not equal to blank.
Yes, or you can wrap the whole thing in an execute actions. So,
Oh,
uh,
that's neat.
so
I didn't think of that.
The technique I use is to put it into a workflow, and I execute the workflow.
That's
Ah.
yeah.
So, yeah, the condition here would be something like,
Does the context change if you put it in a workflow? Like the user, that's the thing that's bitten me every time. I forget that,
I think it will follow the job. Yeah, so this, if you want to just keep, I mean, I like Jim's solution because it, that now can be used in other places as well. But if you want to do it all in one line, now all the actions that have to do with, it's all, the whole thing is conditional on whether or not.
right.
So that ought to give you at least a place to get started.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Cool.
The writing a file, so the save PDF, create PDF, I think that's the action. Create PDF, writes it to a file. It will not come back to the stack until that file is written. I assume that's correct. So, I mean, it's working live.
Yeah,
I assume it'll also work in the context of a automation as well, that it'll do it that way.
the action will be blocking. Yeah, until the action is done, it's going to hold there.
Got it.
Which
Perfect.
gets you to, you might want to use in automation. There's a thing that says, there's an option here that's skip if running. So you might, since if this is checking every 10 seconds and you don't want to overload it, you can use skip if running so that it won't continually fire off more and more if you get
Oh,
flooded.
wow. Yeah. Okay.
And if just pointing out with this, what we've been talking about it is a design that's going to happen one at a time. You just get the next one. But another possibility is if you were getting 5 applications all at once, you could use a load from SQL, create a list from SQL that retrieves all 5, retrieves everything that's pending, and then loops to process all of those, and then sets their status as they go. So might be a little more efficient to build a batch if you're expecting high volume. If it's just one at a time, I mean, it's easy to think about doing things one at a time, but I just point out you could do a batch.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. Again, with this thing about people using PDFs and they're kind of stuck in their ways, they're generating lots of these submissions. I mean, during voting season, there's thousands of them. So in a given day, they may be processing hundreds of them, and yet they still want to process them with PDFs. I've given them how to take the grid and export it into an Excel sheet and then boom, do it that way. And now we need the PDFs. Thanks very much.
So we've got a question that came in on the chat, and I thought I would try to answer that one. There is Anthony. There is a contribution on campfire.planetapp.com, search boost JSON, and this lets you call search boost and get a result. So what you're doing is making an API call, and so I don't know if there's anything here, but I'm going to do a search and click the button. This returns all kinds of JSON content, but it's a search boost result, and you can see it's highlighting my name here wherever it appeared throughout. But it's just searching whatever index that you want, and so you should take a look at that entry. Is this just confirming that was the question that you were asking? Great. So I'll cover it real quickly, but you have access to this so that you can grab,
yeah.
look at it. The action, it's just a server request action, and you call to your server. It's got some, that it's the search get is all standard. You're pointing it to a particular behavior ID number and provide it a query and tell it how many you want. And it'll return a JSON that you can parse through and do whatever you want with.
The behavior, is that where you can have a different section that you want to search?
Correct. Have you done behavior before?
No. I have to fix up my search boots is not working on my site. I don't know why. I just get the 3 bars continually loading. I think I'm going to update.
There's by default there's just one site one behavior, but you can add behaviors, and each behavior has its own set of rules that it uses, and then from that point you can designate a behavior that only pays attention to your files, or only pays attention to one database, or whatever it is that you want to reveal there.
With the database, can you just set it for certain entities?
Let's see. The database it gets a little tricky with database entities. If you have the entity turned on for what is the
index? Yeah.
If you have it turned on, enable indexing, then you're going to get it in every behavior. So if you need control over it, I think best bet is to turn it off at the entity level, and then when you define it in search, you can it would be a content source of database indexing. So you create a rule that applies only to that behavior that and SQL database indexing rule lets you do a query. So you decide exactly what you want in and out, what columns, what you can have where clauses and all that.
Now with the search booth, is this a word by word or a letter by letter type search? So
it's a Lucene index, so much like a Google search. I think Google is only built on Lucene, so it's going to match the search query against and so you get a lot of choices in the settings as far as how you want it to reply. So you can have fuzzy, so it doesn't have to match exactly.
Okay.
Wildcards, multi-word searches. This is set to must contain all words, or so Dale and Warner anywhere in the result. But if you say exact expression, then it must be Dale Warner right together. So, or any of the words Dale or Warner. So you can make quite a bit of tweaking to get it to do what you want. Just when you do this, when you make changes at this level and you save, it wants to re-index all your content. And typically, like a SQL search, that doesn't take very long unless you have just like tons of data.
Now the use case is me trying to create reports from my notes, and now I'm sort of have those notes pull out the type of writing that I would use to then generate with AI. I was just talking to Bogdan about an application with that Pizzazza, and he made mention about the search boost and how you could read through it, but that's why I wanted to bring the question up.
Yep, Search Boost will do a great job at pulling out that JSON content, and then you can use that to train or instruct the AI. So it's a nice combination of tools.
Excellent.
Cool. Glad to have one that I can answer easily. Now that's two. Okay, what else?
So I want to expand on that. The statement you just said there on the search boost, it'll read the JSON and Search Boost to go through the JSON and give you results like at a field level within the JSON? So you don't, is that what I heard you say?
So this example here shows that you can search anything, whatever your search term is, and it returns a JSON string that it's up to you to figure out what to do with.
Okay. So it'll return a JSON string that, like I have a couple records that have JSON fields in them that that I need to compare the JSON, and I hadn't thought about using Search Boost. I'm going right now. My plan is to go parse those and then compare the fields, but I didn't know if that there was a hidden surprise by doing it with Search Boost somehow. So
no, but what might be useful, for example, is Search Boost might help you find an entry that you don't know about.
Okay.
So if you're saying, is there one like this somewhere else, Search Boost might be able to find it. So like if there's an ID or a keyword or something you want to do, Search Boost could then return back the ID of the thing. So like you can see in this structure, there's a document ID 68, whatever. If you can, so programmatically, you could then use that to say, okay, the number 68 might be close to the one, or these 10 different ones might be a duplicate of my original. And so now you could do your processing based on how do I compare record X to record 68.
Right. Okay.
So in something I've done for fun recently, I have been using OpenAI to compare two legal documents. And the question that I asked it is essentially, this is the original that I have of a document. This is the revision that I have to a document. And this is just a bunch of text, right? Two 5-page documents full of text. So I gave it the text, original and revision, and said, are there differences between these two? And it came back with a list of differences. Oh, this address is different. This paragraph meaning has changed. The point is, in the case that you're just talking about, you might be able to use AI to say, I want to compare JSON A to JSON B. Are they the same? And so, for example, the structure might be different, but they might have the exact same fields with the exact same data. Or the differences might only be in a field like time that you don't care about. So you might be able to get AI to do a comparison and return back a true false or a JSON array of differences or something like that you could use to make decisions on whether it's the same or different.
Right. My current process is I get this JSON record and I create a checksum of it. And then later on, I get another record. And if the checksum changes, I know there's a difference in the record. But now we're saying, okay, all we really care about is if the price changes. And once the record's created, so now I'm parsing both records to get the price and saying, oh, is the price any different between these two records that are different? So AI might be able to do that. I'll have to play with that a little bit.
And if you know that the field is called price and where it lives in the structure, you might not. It might be a waste of time to use AI because it's a pretty definite problem that you can just do a comparison.
Right.
But when it's not, when it's two different flavors of I don't want to say apples and oranges, but two different flavors of apples. AI is pretty smart enough to make a determination.
Right. And in our case, what happened was we said we want to test for we were told the only thing that'd be changing is price. But then we found out no other things were changing in there that people said they didn't care about until, until they saw how many changes were coming through for things they didn't care about. Now they care about them.
Mm.
So but
So
yeah, thank you.
sure. So I have a couple of campfire contributions that I don't think we've talked about since for a while, so might be worth knowing. So I'm going to jump to that section and clear out my search here. Get it all cleaned up. Okay. I'm not certain if I've mentioned this one or not, but I want to point out that I did a contribution that talked, I think I did. I think this one was for Don, but it shows how to use checkbox lists to retrieve values, what values are behind a checkbox list, and how you can manipulate what the list looks like from a comma delimited string or vice versa, and also what kind of values are present. So user's text looks like what the user did. User value is an array. User's JSON array is also the same array and value. So if you're just kind of a quick reveal about how these work and how you might work with them, and also like the ability to loop through a and get the values that were selected. That's out there. So that's a contribution.
That was me. Thank you.
Absolutely. There was another one, and I stole heavily from Patrick while he was out. The question about how to generate an iCal or an ICS calendar file so that you can send an attachment in an email. So if we wanted to invite somebody to Campfire next week, we could generate an iCal that says summary. And so I set it up for two different ways. You can set it to view. So this is what the iCal would look like. Or it's also set up where you can download it if you want to just show how somebody could consume one of these. And so if they select the file that gets downloaded, it would look something like that. And they could just accept it and go right on their calendar. So it felt good to be able to get that all out in one spot so that anybody that needs to do an iCal would be ready to go. And yeah, Patrick did all the legwork to say what needs to go behind that. And there's probably other variations of what you can put in here. But
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, this is a pretty basic iCal, but there's a lot more that could be done, but it's what we needed. So, and it's in most cases, I think it would satisfy your requirements.
Quick question on the download.
Yep.
I didn't see it. Maybe it was off screen from being shown on Zoom, but was there a where do you want to put this file?
No. So my browser, when you download something, that's browser dependent.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So I'm sending it. So with the Chrome browser, it just puts it into this recent downloads section, and it's just automatically sending it to my downloads.
Got it.
I didn't get to pick, and the file is, if I can open up the folder here, the file is out on a folder someplace. Whoops, no, I opened up the item. Never mind. But yeah, that happened. It was just kind of automatic. You have to, and you might get a different answer with different browsers. But either way, it's a file that's downloaded, and then if it gets opened and you have a program that knows what to do with ICS files, it will
And
process.
those of you who sign up for office hours are getting an iCal event that's created like this when you sign up.
Absolutely, that's where
Yep.
exactly where I stole it from his work on. So that's that one, and then Jim Everett did one that's I think worth a mention here. That this should be something that we should build into our product, and I suspect we will. But the idea is, you get an error and it has an action ID. It shows up in the log, such and such action failed, and you're now left to figure out which workflow it lives in. And so he enhanced this nice and provided this nice SQL statement so that all you have to do is give it an ID that's failing, and it'll tell you where it found it. And so, for example, and I've already used this SQL statement. I have a workflow, and I'm gonna just illustrate what it might look like. I have a workflow that adds a registration to a Zoom webinar. And within that, I have this action that's number 73. It has a title, a description, a condition. And I just want to point out that I've filled in the description, and that's going to be useful to you when we, if this errored out, number 73 errored out, and that's where your starting spot. You don't really know where this exists. I have a find workflow from action ID query. It's the one that's showing you on the other page. And so you just fill in the blank, 73. So you've got 73 showed up in the error. You type that in. It says, it's the workflow name is add registration to Zoom webinar. It's action 3. It's a type of post data, meaning it's a server request. And you can see the condition and the description and the error message. So if you start filling in those blanks of descriptions and error messages, then when errors do occur in the log, that's going to help you get back to it. So again, ideally, we should have a tool like this in the product that just a nice interface, or better yet, that we do better reporting in the log. But Patrick,
yeah, what about nested actions? So actions that are within an execute actions. Is this?
Yeah. So let's take. I mean, that's a great question. I think it's going to at least point you to the top level, but let's.
Yeah.
Let's see if we have one that we could go search for. That's a parse. This isn't very complex. We could build one, of course. Nothing very complex yet. EDA processing engine. Certainly, I did something complex on that. Execute actions.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we go. So number 20 would be an embedded item, and it has a description. So let's see what that does. The complexity of where we store things start to obfuscate. This might help in some cases find the thing, and I have just this week tried to help somebody find a action that existed in a workflow somewhere. I was trying to find it by name or by content. It was a server request that was being made, and so they knew that they had one that was calling this URL, and trying to find it that way. we store things in a number of different tables, and it's a little bit hard to find. I suspect the tool that Ben has for versions earlier, like in the 5.18 area, would help you find those, but we keep moving things around inside the data structure, so that doesn't work anymore. Anyway, note to us, we need to make it easier to find these things. But that might help you in some circumstances, so I wanted to mention it. Good.
I just had one other question there, Dale, in the chat.
Oh. So the question, when multiple grids are loaded on a page, I see there's a delay to the loading of the grids. Is there a limiter on the API that grids call that can cause a bottleneck for the loading of the page?
It's just when I look at the inspect, and I could have maybe 6 grids loading up as part of like a messaging and other things. It's like everything seems to hang. Some will take a while to load up. And then you look at the dev console, and it's like there's big delays of something then to eventually come back. But then if I put just one of the same grid on a new page, it seems to come back a lot quicker. They all keep going back to that same API for either the grid or the form.
Mm-hmm. I have never investigated to know whether those are blocking each other when there's multiple on the page. Do you happen to know anything about that, Patrick?
No, and I know that I'm actually trying to open up a page now that I know has quite a few grids on it to see what I see, because I know the page, doesn't. This page I'm looking at doesn't load ideally, but it's also, I mean, it's a very, very complex page. It has, it might have definitely more than 10 listings on it. And so I'm checking it out to see what I can see there, but it does load in a reasonable way.
There's no question, too, that there are, depending on what I'm trying to get to is performance of a grid, right? The more records there are and the more complex the SQL is, the harder it is for it to load. So if you start having a lot of those complexities all on one page and they all load up at the same time, it can definitely, I'm saying that the queries might impact how long it loads, not just the fact that there are 6 on the page, but I've never specifically tested that.
And with the queries, you've got the pagination down the bottom. Are you pulling out all the records and then just filtering on the page, or is it going backwards and forwards to get the next 10, next 20, next 30?
Honestly, don't know the mechanism behind. See how much help I am? All right, we may try and learn something about that between now and next week. So we can provide better answers. I know, and I'm a little hesitant to say, I know in some of our designs in the past that you could put grids on different tabs and the grids wouldn't activate until you go to the tab, which is a way to keep everything from happening all at once. I don't know whether we're doing that well on Bootstrap 5 now or not. But that is a control.
I use a form to now try and turn the grids on as I load the first one up, have the other ones hidden, and then load them up with the init part. Also, when the page is ready within a form. That's sort of a workaround at the moment.
So are you finding different performance by doing it that way?
At times, yes. So it's like trying to turn things on. I just got to remember to turn them back on when I'm on the page. Otherwise, I got to do something. It's like, oh, it's not turned on. So I've just got to. But it does seem to make a difference that way.
Okay. So with that, agreeing that it'd be a good thing to know, but not knowing the answer, that'll be where we'll have to leave it today. I want to thank you for showing up. We will do this again next Friday. Maybe we'll have more answers, but we'll definitely talk about it. All right. Thanks all. We'll see you next time. Hang around for Afterglow if you like.